Hey, everybody, welcome back. We are going deep today.
Yeah, really deep.
Into a topic that's been all over the place recently.
Everywhere you look.
Yeah, and it's something we really wanted to kind of unpack.
For sure.
So we're going to be diving into viewpoints in the African-American church community and really seeing where they intersect with politics,
social issues
and faith.
Absolutely. It's such a...
It always feels relevant.
It's an age-old conversation.
Yeah.
But it feels particularly potent right now.
Totally. And the thing that really got us thinking about this deep dive was this sermon clip.
Oh, yeah.
From Pastor Alton R. Williams.
World Overcomers Church.
Of World Overcomers Church.
This thing went viral.
It did.
And he did not hold back.
No, he did not.
It sparked some pretty intense online debate.
It sparked some arguments.
Yeah.
Some back and forth.
Pastor Williams really seems to be zeroing in on this tension I think a lot of folks are feeling.
Which is like, staying true to your political beliefs while also trying to uphold what you see as like biblical values.
Right, and that idea that the two might conflict.
Yeah.
Or that there is even a conflict.
Yeah, he really doesn't mince words. He actually argues that there's a conflict there.
Oh, for sure.
That it's almost like they're competing for your loyalty. And there's this one part of the sermon, and it's really powerful, but he uses some pretty strong language.
Yeah.
Talking about two gods that he sees some churches worshiping.
Oh.
The God of LGBTQ.
Okay.
And the God of blackness. So to really grasp, I think, what he's getting at.
Yeah.
It might help to understand a little bit of the history.
Right. Because, this is a...
like the historical context of it all.
Conversation that has been going on for centuries.
Yeah.
And particularly within the Black church.
Right.
Historically, the Black church has always been more than a place of worship.
Yeah.
It's been a space for community organizing, political action.
Yeah, it's like this bedrock.
Social change.
Yeah.
Alongside spiritual guidance.
So it's like it has this dual role.
Exactly.
It's not just like come here on Sunday and get your faith. It's like, and also let's go change the world.
It is that. And that makes it so potent.
Yeah.
Think about the civil rights movement.
Right.
The Black church was at the center.
Yeah.
Organizing protests.
Providing refuge.
Yeah.
Fueling this fight for equality.
Absolutely.
So Pastor Williams is clearly drawing on that legacy.
Oh, for sure.
But he's applying it to today's issues.
Absolutely. And one of them is this critique of the Democratic Party, that we're hearing more and more.
Yeah, and he really calls them out.
He does.
On issues like same-sex relationships and transgender rights, saying that their policies, especially around gender identity and children, really go against traditional biblical values.
Right. It's important to note that these views are held very deeply by a lot of people in the Black community.
Yeah.
They might not represent everybody,
right,
but they do reflect a certain worldview that's really prevalent.
Yeah.
I think what he's tapping into is this feeling of being squeezed.
Yeah.
Between...
Being pulled in two directions.
Conforming to certain political views because of your race.
But also, like, you're religious.
But then also, like, wait a minute, I'm devout.
Yeah.
I have these biblical convictions.
It's like he's saying, don't not be Black. But it's more like, don't let any label, even racial identity, override your commitment to God.
Right. It's this idea that, faith should transcend all of these other categories and labels.
It's a really bold statement, and I think it leads to some pretty big questions.
Oh, for sure.
About, what are the implications of this message?
Right. What does this mean?
Because on the one hand, he's speaking directly to folks who share his beliefs.
Right.
Who feel like they've been kind of pushed aside. Marginalized in the current political climate.
Absolutely.
But on the other hand, there's this risk.
There is.
Of alienating other folks.
Yeah.
And driving this wedge within the Black community.
Right. How do we do that dance? How do we hold our own convictions deeply and firmly and even speak about them without pushing other people away?
Yeah, it's a tough one.
It is a tough one. Yeah, it's that age-old tension between your own personal convictions and that desire for unity. Like, how do you...
It's a balancing act.
How do you walk that line?
Yeah.
It's a question I think we're all struggling with.
Totally, and it seems like Pastor Williams is drawing a pretty hard line in the sand.
Yeah, he is. He's basically saying you can't serve two masters.
Yeah.
and that's a powerful metaphor. It resonates across so many different spiritual traditions, this idea that at some point you have to choose.
Where does your ultimate allegiance lie?
Right, but couldn't that lead to this kind of like us versus them mentality?
It could.
And create more division and judgment within the Black community, especially towards LGBTQ plus individuals.
Yeah, that's a real concern.
Yeah.
And it highlights this very difficult dance between honoring personal convictions and fostering a sense of belonging and inclusivity.
Right. So how do we do that?
It's the million-dollar question.
Yeah. How do we make space for different viewpoints without resorting to condemnation or exclusion?
Yeah, that is the challenge.
Especially now when everything feels so polarized.
It is a tough one.
Yeah.
I don't think there's an easy answer.
Yeah.
But recognizing the value of diverse perspectives.
Okay.
Understanding that disagreeing with someone doesn't have to equal disrespect.
Right.
And even when it's hard, engaging in these nuanced, these thoughtful dialogues, that's how we grow.
Yeah, we can't just like retreat into our little echo chambers.
Right.
Absolutely.
And just listen to people who think exactly like us.
Right. And this is where I think the Black church, with its legacy of activism and community building, it has such a potent opportunity to step up.
Yeah.
To really be a force for bridging some of these divides.
So instead of being a source of division, it could actually be like...
It could be a force for healing.
Yeah, like a source of healing and understanding.
Yeah, if there's a willingness to listen.
Yeah.
To really hear each other.
Empathize.
To empathize, and to acknowledge that these are complex issues.
It's not about getting everybody to think the same way.
Right. It's not about that.
It's about creating space for the conversation.
It's about creating space for respect for dialogue.
That's a tall order, though.
It is a tall order.
Especially when these kinds of issues, these sensitive topics, are being used as political weapons.
Absolutely.
Like we're seeing play out right now.
And these conversations aren't just theoretical.
Right. They have very real consequences.
They do.
And Pastor Williams doesn't shy away from that.
No, he does not.
He connects his worldview directly to like his political choices.
Right.
He says, I can't in good conscience support a party that goes against what I believe.
Right. And that's where it gets real for a lot of folks.
Yeah.
Faith isn't just something they practice on Sunday.
Right. It's every day.
It's woven into their lives.
Yeah.
Their values, their relationships, their decisions.
How they vote.
And yes, how they vote.
Yeah.
It informs all of it.
And he really links those voting choices to like accountability before God. He actually says you're going to have to stand before God and give an account.
Wow.
What you're pushing on this country.
That's a powerful statement.
Yeah.
It really raises the questions of like personal responsibility, civic engagement, and the role of faith.
That's like your vote isn't just a political act. It's a spiritual one.
It's a powerful perspective.
Yeah.
And it challenges us to really think about the ethical implications of our choices.
As individuals and as a society.
As individuals and as a society.
So where does all this leave us?
Right.
We've kind of gone through Pastor Williams's sermon. The historical context of the Black church, the complexities of identity, and the potential impact of this message.
Right. What are we taking away?
What are the key takeaways here?
I think one of the biggest is the importance of recognizing and respecting the diversity of thought within the Black community.
Yeah.
There's no single narrative
that
represents everyone's experience.
Yeah, and that's true of any community.
It's true of any community.
Right. We can't oversimplify.
Absolutely.
Or stereotype.
We can't.
Yeah.
It's also crucial to acknowledge the influence of faith, and spirituality in shaping these worldviews and how that impacts political stances.
Yeah.
We have to understand that these positions aren't always rooted in logic or reason alone.
Right. There's a much deeper...
There's something else there. Yeah. It's a well of belief and conviction.
And those beliefs deserve to be understood even if we don't agree.
Absolutely. That's what respectful dialogue is all about. Seeking common ground where we can, and acknowledging the complexity.
Yeah.
Even when we can't find common ground.
Yeah, it's not always about like finding the easy answer.
No.
It's about the journey of like talking about it.
The journey itself might be part of the solution. It really is. And I think, that leads us to the biggest question, the one that we're all kind of grappling with, which is how do we navigate these really complex issues while staying true to our own values, but also respecting the values of others, even when they're totally different from our own?
It's the question, isn't it?
It really is.
It's not just a question for the Black community.
No, this is a question for society.
Yeah.
I don't know if there are any easy answers to that.
Right.
But maybe the journey itself is part of the answer. You know, being willing to engage in the conversation.
Right.
To try and see where other people are coming from.
Yeah. To understand.
Even when it's hard.
Yeah, it made me think of something Pastor Williams said towards the end of the sermon. Okay. He talked about this idea of a biblical worldview.
Right.
And how it shapes how we see everything. But he didn't really define it.
Right.
So what does that actually mean?
That's a great question, and one that people have been debating for centuries.
Yeah.
I mean, in the simplest terms, a biblical worldview means seeing life through the lens of Scripture.
Okay.
Using the teachings of the Bible to guide your decisions, your relationship.
Your values.
Your value.
How you see the world.
It's like a framework for understanding.
Right. A framework.
Like your place in the world, your purpose.
Exactly.
Okay.
But here's the thing.
Cross that.
There are so many different ways to interpret the Bible.
Right.
What one person sees as like, core biblical principle, another person might see totally differently.
Right.
And then you add on top of that things like cultural context, your own personal experiences.
Family history, all that.
It gets messy fast.
It's not like you can just like open the Bible and all the answers are right there.
And that's what makes this whole conversation about faith and politics so fascinating and so tricky, because even when people are coming from what they see as a shared foundation,
the Bible,
right? They can end up in completely different places.
On what it means for their lives.
Absolutely.
Right, and who they vote for.
Exactly.
So how do we even begin to bridge those divides?
Right.
Especially knowing these conversations have real consequences.
They do.
For people.
I think it starts with humility.
Okay.
Acknowledging that none of us have it all figured out.
Right.
And that our way of seeing things is not the only valid way.
Have to be open.
We have to listen to each other.
To each other.
Really try to understand where they're coming from, even if we don't agree.
Even when it's hard.
Even when it's hard. It's like you were saying before, disagreement doesn't have to equal disrespect.
Exactly. Maybe that's the starting point for a better conversation. A more compassionate one about faith and politics and identity in America today.
Lots to think about.
Lots to think about.
Well, on that note, I think we're going to wrap up our deep dive for today.
Okay.
We covered a lot.
Good.
We went from Pastor Williams' message to the history of the Black church, the complexities of identity, and how do we navigate all of this stuff.
It's a lot.
It is a lot, but it's really fascinating.
It's a really important conversation.
It is. And hopefully this gets you thinking out there.
Absolutely.
Keep those wheels turning.
Keep those wheels turning.
I will see you next time.
See you next time.